Welcome to Kairos Conversations. This is a space for clinicians, leaders, and operators who are building in the aesthetic medicine space with intention. We take the data, the experience, and the real-world challenges of this industry and turn them into clarity you can actually use. I'm Taylor Siemens, nurse practitioner, operator, and founder of Kairos. I know that in this field, it's not just about what you do. It's about when you do it and how you lead through it. Let's dive in. So a 1% price increase. I mean, it basically sounds like a rounding error, right? But in the world of premium medicine, a tiny 1% tweak to a price tag can actually skyrocket a practice's profits by up to 10%. It's pretty wild. So today we are going to do a deep dive into the hidden math and honestly, the really intense psychology behind why so many aesthetic medicine practices and med spas are trying to make the shift to premium pricing and positioning. For decades, medicine has operated on this break-fix model. You are broken, we fix you, and you pay us. But what we are examining today abandons that model entirely. Pricing in this new space, well, it isn't just a number on a menu. It's a profound communication of value and trust. And to figure out how this intricate machinery actually works, we have a really fascinating stack of sources today. We are pulling from actual marketing strategy transcripts, specifically from a group called Mechanics Magic Marketing. And we're also diving into the back-end growth guides of industry software and optimizing activities for your team. Plus, we are cross-referencing all of that with specialized medical consulting reports on concierge medicine because we have a lot of concepts to learn from our colleagues who have mastered that area of medicine. And that combination is great because it gives us a uniquely multi-layered perspective. We're able to see the marketing that sells the service and the software and the team that mechanically runs the business, along with the raw medical data that reveals the psychology of the patients paying for those premium bills. It's really, well, it's a whole ecosystem. So my mission for you today it's pretty simple. It's to shortcut your way to understanding how we as healthcare businesses can successfully transition from just standard service providers to highly profitable luxury experiences. But before we can even talk about the logistics of setting a price tag, we have to look at what is actually being priced. Because in the luxury medical space, consumer perception, well, it essentially dictates reality. Let's start with a massive roadblock identified right away in our marketing sources. I like to call it the consultant epidemic. Yes, there is currently this absolute epidemic of business consultants out there telling practice owners exactly what they want to hear. They swoop into your practices and say, just charge more, maximize your profit. Well, just position yourself as a luxury provider. And I mean, the allure of just declaring yourself a luxury brand overnight, it's incredibly strong. Who wouldn't want that? But it's time for a very harsh reality check here. The market is brutally efficient at reminding you of what is real. And listen, I hope I am not the first one to tell you that the market doesn't care about your aspirations. You can pin your prices to a luxury price point all day long, but if you don't have the goods to back it up, you just end up with an empty appointment book, which plays right into basic consumer psychology. I actually like to use a car shopping analogy for this. Like when you as a consumer are shopping for cars, you naturally assume that a more expensive car is expensive for a reason. We are psychologically wired to use price as a subconscious signal of quality. Our brains just immediately tell us, well, if it costs more, it must be better. And that exact psychological process is at play when a patient looks at a treatment menu. Higher price can actually act as a magnet because it signals elite quality to the consumer. But, and this is a huge but, that only works if the actual physical experience matches the psychological signal that you just sent out. I was engaging on LinkedIn last week on this very topic, and a guy commented something that I think serves up this whole concept perfectly. He said, "You can't put a Rolls-Royce badge on a Hyundai and get away with charging $300,000 for it." Okay, so let's unpack this because I was reading through the source material and they mentioned that being an A- practice, well, it just isn't good enough to charge premium pricing. But wait, an A- is still an A, right? Like you have skilled providers, the clinic is clean, it's decorated beautifully, and the front desk is super friendly. Why is the barrier to premium pricing so intensely high? And why doesn't an A- cut it? What's fascinating here is that it comes down to the mechanics of friction and betrayal. Oh, betrayal. That is a strong word. But think about it from the patient's perspective. If they come to you paying absolute top dollar, they are expecting a flawless and frictionless experience. If they suddenly realize they are paying the highest price in town for what is essentially the cheapest Botox experience, they don't just leave, they feel actively betrayed. So the price sets an invisible, rigid expectation. And if you break that expectation, they feel tricked. Let's look at a concrete example from our concierge medicine friends, right? Imagine paying, saying, I don't know, $5,000 a year just to be on a concierge doctor's roster. Now, the actual medical care is phenomenal. You love the providers, but every time you call the office to book an appointment, you get put on hold for 4 minutes listening to that scratchy, static-filled elevator music that has never been updated. I hate that. At standard pricing, well, I probably wouldn't even process that. I expect a little friction. But at premium prices, that 4-minute hold with scratchy music feels like a personal insult. You just put it on speaker and you have to wait on hold and the frustration just builds. That is the betrayal. So an A- means there's a flaw somewhere. Maybe your website is slightly outdated and it's hard to navigate. Or maybe the process of getting a hold of your clinical team is frustrating. Or there's a hiccup with the front desk and scheduling. At standard pricing, those are just, quirks. A patient forgives those. But at luxury prices, those minor service issues instantly destroy your credibility. Moral of the story here, you basically lose the right to make A- mistakes when you are asking your patients to pay premium pricing. Every single touch point has to justify the number on the invoice. Every experience has to be perfect on all facets. Okay. So let's say you've established you have the absolute A+ goods. No scratchy hold music. You've got a gorgeous website, brilliant providers. But here is the catch-22. How do you prove that you are worth luxury prices to a stranger who has never experienced your service without that massive high price tag immediately scaring them away? Well, that is the exact problem that the marketing sources here have tackled for us. They outline a beautiful and strategic framework for this that they call the 2 buckets. Essentially, every customer out there falls into one or 2 categories. Bucket 1, well, those are the strangers. They are the people who don't know you yet. And to them, you don't look clearly superior to the 2 or 3 other clinics in town that also have a highly curated Instagram feed and 5-star Google reviews. Because, let's just be honest. These days, a nice Instagram, well, they're just table stakes. It didn't prove anything, and it's purely decorative until proven otherwise. Then you've got your bucket 2 people. These are your loyalists. They are the patients who know, like, and trust you based on their own direct personal experience with your business. So the entire goal of a growing practice is moving people from bucket 1 into bucket 2. And the strategy for those bucket 1 strangers is to relentlessly reduce friction. You need a low barrier to entry. And this is where clinics use really attractive new patient promotions or referral programs or events to get prospects in to experience you. You are fundamentally trying to tip those scales. When a stranger is weighing their options, you have to engineer a scenario where choosing you over the competitor is a no-brainer. Whether you're offering financial benefits or benefits from a time perspective, perspective, like being open for extended hours or other unique value propositions or UVPs? Well, there's a fantastic reference in the sources to a book called The Advertising Effect, and it highlights a specific psychological principle. That principle is action changes attitude faster than attitude changes action. Instead of trying to convince someone you're luxurious through an expensive ad campaign, you get them in to take action, like a booking for a discounted service, or like we do at Kairos, because discounts aren't really part of our DNA or culture. We host events or community activations and let the physical experience and the experience interacting with our amazing team begin to change their attitude. Because the best way to create perception is through a tangible experience. And here, in my opinion, is where it gets really interesting, because as I was reading this, it honestly reminded me of dating. Well, think about it. You don't ask someone to marry you on the first date and demand this massive commitment, right? That would be terrifying. It'd be creepy, actually. Well, those are your bucket one people. You buy them a $5 cup of coffee first to reduce friction and let them get to know you. You prove value in low stakes environment. And once they trust you, then you move them to those bigger commitments. Yeah, I think it's exactly like that. It's like the dating. Once they get in the door and actually feel your A+ service, they transition into bucket two. And that's the exact moment that businesses can begin testing the waters with higher standard pricing, raising those prices gradually to the upper limit of the market. And here is why I'm cautioning you to be super careful with discounts, though, because if you raise your prices on those people you just brought in with a severe discount, some of them are going to leave. Even your loyalists, right? When you start raising prices, those bucket two loyalists, well, some of them are going to cancel. They're going to leave. It's how this whole thing works, which sounds absolutely terrifying for business owners trying to grow. It's really intimidating, but don't worry. If this is the path you decide to take, the underlying math provides a massive safety net. This attrition is almost always more than offset by the increased revenue and profitability from the patients who do stay with you. The math here, well, it saves you. So operationally, the business is left with a smaller physical workload, fewer patients walking in the door, but significantly better profit margins. They might even increase their overall gross revenue, all while seeing up to 20% fewer people. So essentially, working less, but making more, which brings up the mechanics of how a clinic actually structures that loyalty. Because once a patient is comfortably sitting in bucket two, well, how does a clinic ensure this loyalty translates into a long-term sustainable profit without constantly hustling for new clients? I mean, that is the dream. That's what we are all trying to achieve, right? And this is where we shift from marketing psychology to the raw mechanics of the business operations. Now, I'm pulling heavily here from the concierge medicine consulting reports. The business must pivot to high margin offerings, and the mechanisms holding all of this highly profitable revenue together, well, it's memberships. The data shows memberships are basically a financial superpower. Aesthetic practices that utilize memberships see their retention rates at 80%, and compare that now to the standard industry average of just 50%. So what does all of this mean? If a clinic throws 3 different membership options and an a la carte menu at a patient, don't they just risk overwhelming them and causing decision paralysis? I mean, my instinct as a consumer is quite honestly to run. It feels like getting nickel and dimed. So how do we as clinics avoid coming off like pushy used car dealerships with all of these upsells? If we connect us to the bigger picture, that's exactly why the technology running behind the scenes is so critical. Proper use of electronic medical records or EMRs or other software like CRMs prevent this chaos through something called choice architecture. Now, there are some EMRs that do this intuitively, but I'm assuming here most people are not planning on changing their current software after listening to this. So I'm going to break this down for you on how a dedicated team member should be handling this. Documentation and planning are king. So instead of handing a patient a blank menu of 50 different services and add-on options, which causes that overwhelming decision paralysis, part of our team's job is to research the history of every single patient coming in, every single appointment. What services have they done? What did the clinicians recommend next in their treatment plan? Where are they in that annual treatment plan we developed? Did they purchase any products about 3.5 months ago? Because chances are they likely need a reminder that they need to refresh that product. They present these clear, customized next steps in conjunction with the provider's recommendations at checkout. So they might simply say something like, hey, Jane, it looks like you haven't had talks in about 3.5 months. And you don't have that appointment booked yet. Should we go ahead and get that scheduled with the injector at your next appointment in 4 weeks for your facial? Or, now this time summer's coming up. So we might say something like, hey, we know you're going to have a great summer out on the lake. So let's make sure you have the right SPF for waterproofing and go ahead and get your BBL photo facials on the schedule for the beginning of fall. So we have a plan in place to rid all that UV damage you're likely going to get. I don't want you to be stressed on that boat. Let's make sure we've got a plan in place. What this does is it removes the cognitive load of deciding from scratch. So it's easier for your patients to process, and it presents that upsell as personalized recommendations rather than a sales tactic. But here's the thing, it has to be the right recommendation, clinically guided, not just a means to hit a revenue objective. Patients feel that. And that brings us back to that wild statistic we mentioned at the very, very beginning. The ultimate financial goal for these practices, for all of us, is to hit a 30 to 40% profit margin. And well, according to the PwC study cited in the sources, a thoughtfully executed 1% price increase on high value items can yield an 8 to 10% boost in overall profits. I know you're asking like, okay, Taylor, but how? Well, your fixed costs, your rent, your staff salaries, electricity, all your utilities, malpractice insurance, all of those things are already covered by your baseline operations. So when you raise the price by just 1%, assuming your volume stays relatively stable, almost all of that one directly to the bottom line profit. It is pure gain. Now, hear me. I am not telling you to raise everything simply by 1%. You've got to go do the work to evaluate every service and membership offering that you have to determine what should actually increase and by how much. The math here makes perfect, undeniable sense. But when these clean, perfect spreadsheets meet actual messy human psychology, things get wonderfully complicated. It's because pricing is not just an arithmetic equation, it's deeply emotional. The emotional volatility surrounding healthcare pricing is unlike almost any other industry. Let's look at the psychological difference between billing structures. Paying, let's say $150 a month feels like a totally affordable lifestyle choice to most consumers. But if you tell that exact same person they owe $1,800 a year upfront, well, that feels like a massive financial burden. It's a commitment they will need to seriously evaluate. Even though $150 a month and $1,800 a year are the exact same amount of money. It's the exact same amount, but the emotional weight is completely different. And this isn't just about the subscription fatigue we have going on. It's about healthcare anxiety. When you ask someone for $1,800 upfront for their aesthetic medicine care, you are subconsciously reminding them of their own mortality and undeniable aging process. It triggers a risk assessment mindset. The patient thinks, am I actually going to have $1,800 worth of aging this year to justify this? But $150 a month, well, that gets categorized in the brain under lifestyle and wellness maintenance, right next to their Pilates membership or their organic grocery budget. It completely bypasses the mortality risk assessment. It's fascinating. You are shifting the mental bucket from emergency expense to wellness routine. And that misunderstanding, that emotional volatility, it can spectacularly backfire on clinics. It tracks perfectly with retail psychology. I mean, look at consumers, how they react to something priced at $99 versus $100. It's a $1 difference, you guys. But crossing that 3-digit threshold completely changes how the buyer feels about the purchase. So if a clinic is listening to this and realizes they need to overhaul their pricing to match their value, how do you actually pull it off without aggressively triggering this patient mass exodus? Well, concierge consulting guides are very clear on the transition strategy. You cannot just flip a switch overnight and tell your patients, hey, we're luxury now. Your fees are doubling. It requires a deliberate, communicative, and thoughtful rollout. According to our sources, you must announce structural changes 3 to 6 months in advance. You cannot blindside people with their own healthcare. And the data actually shows that if you offer a 10 to 15% early enrollment discount during that transition period, you can usually convert about 20% of your existing patient base into the new higher priced membership model. And those who do convert are doing so because you have clearly articulated the mechanical value of exactly what they are getting. Which raises another important question. What exactly are they getting? People are paying for tangible services, extended appointment times, access to new treatments first, 24/7 access to the clinical team, or comprehensive preventative care protocols. They are not just paying an arbitrary access fee, because when you charge more, patients' expectations rise proportionately, and you are permanently on the hook to deliver, meaning you can never, ever go back to being A-. Well, let's recap this journey we've been on. We started off by looking at the absolute necessity of actually having the goods to avoid the friction and betrayal of an A- experience. Then we looked at how clinics use marketing models to funnel total strangers from bucket 1 into bucket 2, the loyal believers. And once they are in bucket 2, we explored how memberships and the choice architecture of smart EMR software or team members to structure that loyalty into highly profitable, predictable revenue streams. If this conversation helped you think differently about your practice, share it with someone else who's building with intention. And if you're ready to go deeper, you'll find more resources, training, and tools inside Kairos Aesthetic Training. Until next time, I'm Taylor Siemens. Stay curious, take action, and trust the timing of your growth.